Acum, oameni buni, cel mai important documentar despre corpul uman. Aici ce vedem, copii subnutriți care au probleme cu vederea, fața lor este ascuțită, totul este de la mâncare.
People think that I'm different. I'm not normal. Most kids don't want to be around me. I feel like I belong somewhere else.
De ce există acest bullying, care, cum se spune în engleză? Pentru că tu, când vezi ceva care este diferit față de tine și nu este sănătos ca copil, ai tendința să îl degradezi și mai tare, pentru că, cum ar veni, tu îl atenționezi că este ceva în neregulă cu el, dar tu, fiind copil, tu nu înțelegi ceea ce se întâmplă și ești dat afară din echipă, pentru că nu ai ce căuta cu echipa. Dar este exact ca cum tu, când te duci la orice întâlnire, în afară cum este în această societate cu bani, prima și prima este atracția dintre un bărbat și femeie. Femeia se uită la cât de frumos ești. Și mă refer la tot, la înălțime, la structura feței. Și cam acolo se trage, pentru că noi suntem fix ca natură, exact cum animalele. Dacă te uiți leoaica, când are mascul, dar de obicei nu se întâmplă niciodată ca să fie un leu care să aibă probleme, că nu există natură. În natură nu există ca animale să nască defecte. În niciun caz, doar dacă animalul ăla au fost subnutrit, exact ca corpurile umane. Aici arată diferența dintre un animal care a consumat mâncarea lui versus un animal care a consumat mâncare gătită sau fiartă.
To begin the study, a population of animals was selected which Pottinger aptly dubbed run-of-the-pen cats. His major concern was that his cats represent a normal sampling of animals, with the exception that cats with obvious deformities or disease were excluded. Pottinger was intrigued by what he termed heat labile factors, or put as an experimental question, he asked, does the cooking process somehow render food nutritionally deficient, causing eventual physiological degeneration? One group of cats received raw meat or cooked meat along with the basic diet. The other group of cats were given raw milk, pasteurized milk, evaporated milk, or sweetened condensed milk. Although there were two different studies, one focusing on milk and the other on meat, the results of both studies were nearly identical. Over the next 10-year period, Pottinger observed and recorded numerous physiological changes in the experimental animals and their offspring. The pasteurized milk-fed cats, shown here, move about the pen in a manner quite different from the raw milk cats. The cat in the foreground actually developed arthritis during the experiment. They are lethargic, much like animals in a zoo. With evaporated milk, there was even greater deterioration. When the study was begun, this cat was better developed than any animal shown thus far. The sweetened condensed milk-fed cats not only had their milk heat processed, but there was the addition of sugar. They are nervous animals. For a further comparison, here is another example of normal development. Notice the firm gingiva, the normal coloring tones, the beautiful broad mouth, the full jaw with obvious power.
Bullying, inclusiv de la mâța sănătoasă de reject la pisica bolnavă, exact cum facem noi când suntem copii la școală.
The raw milk female gets in 20 or 30 licks for every one of the pasteurized milk female, then leaps away in disgust. Disturbing as these observations might be, the impaired balance, the lack of energy, the dental deterioration, some of the most significant findings emerged as Pottinger extended his study down to the second and third generations. Almost immediately, Pottinger noticed that animals fed the raw meat diet for 2 generations appeared larger than the same generation of cooked meat cats. At 16 weeks, this second-generation raw meat cat weighs 2,000 grams, while the second-generation cooked meat animal only comes up to 1,600 grams. Compare the black kitten with this raw meat kitten. The sheen, the sparkle of the eyes, the well-developed face. The skulls of adult cats with a long ancestry of raw food diets are surprisingly constant. Here we find the development of a second-generation cooked meat animal. The head has begun to flatten and is actually smaller than the comparable raw meat cat. The skull shows the major reasons for this change. The zygomatic arch is not completed. The nasal development is somewhat irregular, and the calcium content has fallen to 10%. Third-generation cooked meat animals show the most remarkable skeletal change. The skull is considerably smaller. It is flat with pointed features. The skull shows a poorly developed zygomatic arch. The bones are paper-thin and soft like sponge rubber. The frontal sinuses had developed in a peculiar fashion, and the calcium content of the bones had fallen to a low 3% by weight. Here is a second-generation cooked meat mother with her third-generation offspring. Her offspring developed nasal and ocular allergies. From this same litter came an asthmatic kitten. Pronounced exhaustion was a typical observation among the third generation of cooked meat kittens, as well as impaired coordination. This third-generation cooked meat kitten had over 24 fractures, resulting from a failure in development. The cooked meat cats were unable to successfully reproduce after the third generation. Most were void of sexual interests, and those...
Bine, aici când zice de infertilitate, că e vorba în general mai mult de la bărbat, că la bărbat să ali tot testosteronul. E bine, este adevărat, frate, că tot ce au introdus ei mâncare a făcut în așa fel încât să reducă testosteronul bărbatului și să fie bărbatul feminin, să devină feminin. Este o grămadă de estrogen în care, deci în mâncare este o grămadă de estrogen care ca bărbat devii feminin. Deci din cauza asta există această cultură cu gay, că nu a fost, cum să zic eu, că s-a întors bărbatul, s-a gândit, domne, că mi-ar place să fac aia. Nu, frate, este făcut de ei chestia asta. Este un documentar care explică foarte detaliat chestia asta. O să vă lăs aici o poză cu documentar, să vedeți și documentarul ăla.
Those that had attempted to mate could only produce stillborn litters. On the other hand, the raw meat animals continued to reproduce healthy offspring generation after generation. The notion that specific nutritional factors in food may be destroyed by heat processing is obviously not far-fetched.
Acum pot să vă zic din ce am găsit eu. Deci, de cât timp fac eu această dietă, în primul rând ce am văzut că s-a îmbunătățit, craniul s-a făcut mai, s-a format o leacă mai, zic eu, mai proeminent. Deși nu fac niciun sport nimic, ca să vede musculatura mea că este mult mai dezvoltată. Din ce am citit de la Agnas, ca să vă zic, tu, ca înălțime, dacă ești scund de statură, ai șansa, chiar și dacă începe asta după 30 de ani, ai șansa să te înalți vreo câțiva centimetri, nu știu exact concret, dar normal, înălțimea omului este din ce am văzut eu și ce am înțeles eu, între 1,90 până în 2 metri și 10 centimetri, ceva de genul. Asta este înălțimea normală a omului. Încă o chestie ce am văzut, dar până și penisul bărbatului are legătură cu mâncarea asta. Dacă ai mâncat, dacă copilul tău dacă tu ca copil începi să mănânci mâncarea asta cam pe la vreo 10 ani, când atunci ai treabă cu organul sexual, s-ar putea să formezi penisul tău exact cum trebuie. Că până la 14-15 ani după aceea nu mai ai treabă cu penisul tău, nu se întâmplă nimica. Și mai este faza și cu claviculele, ce o zis el, cu ce folosește el ca metodă de a-și mări penisul. S-ar putea să fie și aia, să aibă dreptate, dar în general este vorba de mâncarea ta și tu, la cât de frumos ești, este vorba că dacă ai mâncat mâncarea care a fost prin design făcută pentru acest corp. Dacă n-ai mâncat ce trebuie, practic la orice vârstă tu poți să faci chestia asta, să vezi îmbunătățiri într-o lună, o să vezi îmbunătățiri, o să ai multe detoxuri, o să te simți rău de multe ori, dar o să vezi îmbunătățiri maxime în multe puncte de vedere, nu o să-ți vină să crezi. În punct de vedere poate care eu nici măcar nu le știu, dar voi puteți să le observați, că vă știți cum arătați și cum reacționați.
It's oysters again. And on such an important occasion, can you blame the dredgers for making it a whoopee party? But what I want to know is, how many oysters reach the shore? Hiya, babe. As I said before, there's an in the month.
And to those who are partial to oysters, very tasty, very sweet.
300,000 oysters were hardly enough to go round.
At one time, 100 million oysters were eaten annually in Britain.
Henry Coit established the American Association of Medical Milk Commissioners. Physicians that would go out and look at dairies, audit them, and make sure they had very clean, pristine conditions. The milk was chilled, the cows were healthy, and that milk was called the certified raw milk. That was used in the White House. It was on the Titanic. Presidents drank it. It was taken to the Mayo Clinic to heal people.
Just bring it, he said, and he'd eat it raw. All Mike needs now is a knife and fork. Too late, so it's Skew's fingers. A strong man by profession, Mike eats 6 pounds of raw meat a day. Something to wash down that snack? How about a nice long drink of raw eggs? About a dozen eggs, as raw as his meat, go to make up Mike's daily diet.
The food chemist, scientifically analyzing foods into their nutritive elements, will tell us that health, vitality, mental alertness, steady nerves, and even happiness and a wholesome outlook on life are all very largely determined by the foods we eat. It's surprising how many people ignore such sage and scientific advice.
In 1912, Sir Gowland Hopkins, late President of the Royal Society, whom you see here in his Cambridge laboratory, drew the attention of the scientific world to the existence of vitamins, those organic constituents of common foods which are needed for proper growth and to give protection against disease. Here you see him among some experimental animals on the Institute's farm. He carried out experiments on animals which showed that a minimum of calcium, iron and phosphorus was absolutely necessary for their proper growth and full health. In 1932, Sir Robert McCarrison's work in India showed that the great variation in physique between different Indian races was a direct result of the difference between their diets. Those southern races, which live principally on rice, are poor in physique, as compared with the northern races, which eat milk, fruit, vegetables and meat. A group of rats are being brought up on a typical poor working class diet, and compared with another group of rats fed upon a good diet. Here's a typical rat from each group. The smaller rat received the working class diet. You can see how much healthier and more lively the bigger one is.
Chestii care pot să spun aici că emoțiile nu mai sunt atât de explozivi și practic nici nu prea mai există emoții nașpa despre persoana ta, despre persoanele din jurul tău. Gândirea ta este mai perfectă, mai clară. În stomacul tău, când intră în stomacul tău această mâncare, ai emoții de bucurie și durează foarte, foarte mult. Practic, cât timp mănânci mâncarea ta, ești fericit.
Children are the first victims of bad or insufficient food. Perhaps the most important point established was that the addition of a pint of milk to a quite generous diet made boys grow taller and heavier, reduced their proneness to various diseases, and gave them more physical and mental vitality. There is a marked difference in the heights of boys drawn from different classes of society. At 13 years of age, the boys at Christ's Hospital School are on an average nearly 2.5 inches taller than those from council schools. At 17, they're nearly 4 inches taller than working boys of the same age. These differences are largely due to differences between the food they eat.
And you must remember that the national consumption of milk and butter is too low.
The experts are agreed that there is malnutrition. But in all countries, even in a prosperous country like Britain, there is much ill health and suffering due to malnutrition. Ignorance about proper diets is widespread.
But there are hundreds of thousands of housewives who cannot afford to buy enough of the high-grade protective foods. All they can do is to feed their families with the lower-grade filling foods so that they won't feel hungry.
Se vede pe fața băiatul ăsta cum este subnutrit, cum fața lui este ascuțită, cum este palid, cum este o leacă, parcă este incompletă fața lui.
Thus there is no starvation, but their physical development may be interfered with, and their resistance to disease lowered.
Babies need plenty of milk. They need daily cod liver oil, so does the expectant and nursing mother. Liver, lightly cooked, is a valuable food for her. New scientific knowledge has shown us a new standard of life at which to aim. A new charter is being written for the people of the world, and by whatever means the problem is tackled, a better level of health and nutrition must and will be achieved.
He did demonstrate that the animals could make considerable gains towards physiological normalcy, but it took 4 generations of a raw food diet before the animals regained their native structure and original level of well-being. An interesting sidelight came 6 months after the experiment's conclusion, when volunteer weeds emerged in the fallow pens. In the raw milk pens, the plants flourished. In the pasteurized milk pens, the growth was somewhat less hardy. Plants in the evaporated milk pens struggled, and the sweetened condensed milk pen speaks for itself.
And this is one real fundamental difference between traditional cultures and our own, is they ate the whole animal, including the organ meats. So less than 1% tooth decay in the Swiss village. They didn't have any dentists, so this was just natural protection against tooth decay. The other thing that really surprised him was that everybody had naturally straight teeth. There were no dental deformities. They had very broad faces, especially in what he called the middle third of the face between the eyes and the mouth. High cheekbones, which we consider the mark of attractiveness. So everyone had naturally straight teeth. They were very sturdy and strong and tall. He went to villages where there were roads that were bringing in the foods of commerce, as he called them, displacing foods of modern commerce. And there he found a very different situation. He found 1 tooth in 3 was decayed, and the children who were born to the parents who had changed their diets, they had more narrow faces, and they had crowded and crooked teeth. So in just 1 generation, the dental deformities appeared. This is not a genetic thing. This is a nutritional problem. And then in just 1 generation, the faces became more narrow. There were dental deformities, overbites, underbites, and that's a nutritional problem. You are not providing the body with the nutrients it needs to build according to the blueprint. And the blueprint of every person on this planet, we're all children of God, we all have the same blueprint, and that is to have a wide, attractive face and naturally straight teeth.
I'm making a video about how I am a very unlucky person. I've never been able to ever experience a long-term relationship. All my relationships that I've had in my life with females have all been short-term relationships. They've lasted between the time span of 1 to 3 months. I'm just going to be a loser for the rest of my life and be unlucky for the rest of my life. And luck seems to just be something that some of us get, but not all of us get. Some of us get luck, and some of us have it, and some of us don't. And I'm one of the people that don't have it.
Aceeași problemă este că, din cauza că toată viața lui a mâncat porcării, a mâncat toxic, frate. Și corpul lui nu s-a dezvoltat cum trebuie. Nu este vorba de genetică, ai o prostie, frate. Tu ești perfect, corpul tău trebuia să fie cel mai frumos, să fi fost cel mai frumos om posibil. Dar din cauza că măta și cu tactul și cu neamul tău nu știi nimica despre ce este acest corp, pentru că mi se pare foarte amuzant că vorbim despre Dumnezeu și despre religii și despre esoteric și despre extraterestri, dar ce este cel mai important, frate, pentru mine este acest mecanism care l-am. Asta este cel mai important. Ce îi face plăcere acestui mecanism? Este asta, frate. El așa a fost făcut. Și copilul ăsta ce zice aici este din cauza că toată viața lui a ascultat de măsa și de tasul și de habar nu a avut, că toate problemele lui au fost din cauza că nu a mâncat mâncarea pentru acest corp. Uitați-vă leacă aici la diferența dintre un vegetarian și un om care a mâncat mâncarea lui. Cum arată, ca să înțelegi cât de adevărat este această chestie.
Opportunity for me to look at two placentas side by side, one being a vegetarian placenta and the other one being a mom that was very nutrient dense with the foods that she was eating with an animal-based diet. I cannot believe the difference in the quality of the placenta, and not just the quality of the placenta, but in turn the nutrition of what the baby was growing in and what the baby received throughout the whole pregnancy. This one right here was from a mom that was primarily vegetarian throughout her pregnancy. Towards the end of her pregnancy, I was able to get her on liver pills just because her iron had dropped so significantly. And this is the placenta of a mom who was animal-based throughout her pregnancy. So she had lots of red meat, lots of pasteurized eggs, lots of raw milk. And the difference between the two, I mean, it's just obvious. There is such a huge substantial difference in the quality and the consistency of these placentas. Over here, this is called calcification. If you feel it, it's hard. There's a little bit of like a sand-like, rock-like consistency, and this is throughout the whole entire placenta. This is not what we would want to see in pregnancy. It's really sad that this is the start of a baby's life. This is the start of their nutrition. This is what fed them. This is what housed them.
There are still around 3 million adult virgins in this country. 45-year-old Clive counts himself among them.
It feels unfair because I know I'm a loving, thoughtful person.
But despite being a keen performer, he's never managed to strike the right chord with the ladies.
I started to lose my hair at 23. That didn't do me a lot of confidence, a lot of good. I had really bad acne up until I was 30. Pie, Frey Bentos, come on. Look at that. That is the food of champions.
But
De ce credeți că vă pierdeți părul? Ei, o să explic ceea ce a spus Agnes. Păi, deci sistemul limfatic la om e la atâta toxic de la mâncarea asta, care sunt de o grămadă de ore, sunt metalii grele, din pesticidele și din toate porcăriile și preazei care intră în mâncare și pe aceea noi le mâncăm, ei, ce se întâmplă? La un moment dat este atacat creierul. Ei, și sistemul limfatic ce face? Le topește și le transformă în așa fel și ghicește pe unde le elimină. Le elimină prin gingii, tartul ăla care îl ai, frate, dacă ai o grămadă de tartru la dinți, este rezultatul toxicului care îl ai de la metalele grele, care sistemul limfatic l-a eliminat pe acolo. Ei bine, dacă nu face față cu gingile sau câteodată sunt blocate și nu mai poate să elimine prin tartura, prin gingii, elimină prin scalp și de asta nu mai ai păr. Dacă te uiți în trecut, bărbații cum aveau, tot timpul nu exista chestia asta, nu exista, frate, ca bărbații să nu aibă păr pe cap pentru că erau sănătoși, nu exista asta, frate. Tu când te uiți la omul ăsta, tu vezi un om bolnav, frate. Când există un om care n-are păr în cap, înseamnă că ai o grămadă toxică în tine, frățică, de asta nu ai păr în cap. Asta este adevărul, asta e ce-a descoperit Agenas.
Like Lindsay, who he's known since college, they rarely end up as girlfriends.
I don't think I give off that vibe of being a sexual being. I think girls see me as more of a friend.
I've had midwives and doulas tell me that when they see the placenta, which is attached to the umbilical cord of vegans, they look a lot like a smoker's placenta. And we know that the health of these critical connections, this tether between baby and mother, are intimately tied to the amount of animal products in the diet. We see it over and over illustrated.
If we have somebody that's eating animal-based, if we had somebody that's eating grass-fed, grass-finished meats on a regular basis, if we have somebody that's eating pasteurized eggs and raw dairy, then what we're gonna see is all of these vitamins, this retinol, this copper, that's all being pushed through the placenta and helping this baby sustain life.
They recognize that when a child is being formed and growing, that's when you need the maximum nutrition. And once you get to adulthood, you can improve your health with your diet, but you cannot change your form. Your house has already been built, okay? Your temple is already built. So the maximum nutrition is really important for conception, preconception, and growth. This is fermented shark liver oil, and this was a sacred food considered very important for having healthy babies. We tested some egg yolks. We found 8 times more D and 2 times more A in the pastured egg yolk compared to the supermarket yolk. The organic was somewhere in the middle. We found 10 to 13 times more vitamin A and 3 times more D in butter made from grass-fed cream compared to the one on the left I made from cream from Costco.
If your body lacks these elements, you will one day discover that you're a long way from being the man or woman you could have been.
Most people today, especially in the Blackpool community, believe that they have bad genes and that's it, it's just over for them. And any children that they will have bad genes also. What bad genes? Most of the people today who complain about their looks have been malnourished. They didn't develop well. They don't look the way they were supposed to look like. Their blueprint is different than the way they ended up looking because they were malnourished. And that's because of these modern new diets. It never used to be like this. Usually back in the day, the way you were supposed to look like was the way you ended up looking.